What if the problem with your organizing system isn't you, but the fact that your system isn't meeting you where you are? Because our energy changes, our capacity changes, our circumstances change, but a lot of the times our systems stay the same. So today I want to talk about adaptive organization, or basically creating flexible systems that change based on us. They meet us where we are. If we haven't met yet, my name is Isabel, and on this channel we talk all about embracing your weird in order to build a better brand, business, and life. So let's go. In the last video, I talked about the Clutterbug organizing system, how much I love it, and honestly, I do think it's a brilliant system for understanding your organizing preference. But I also mentioned that I think it's missing a tiny variable, which is our capacity. Some days we have energy and focus and time, and on other days those resources are spent. Whether it's because we're in the middle of a health crisis, whether it's because we are neurodivergent and so it fluctuates a lot, whether, anything, like you're moving, you got bad news, you had a bad hair day, for whatever reason, all humans' capacity changes every single day and sometimes every single minute. And so we need to be able to create systems that adapt to us instead of us having to adapt to a system. However, I love the Clutterbug system, and I love how we can look at our preference and organize systems based on what we like the most and what we actually prefer to do. In the last video, we talked about the Clutterbug organizing system and how I noticed a nuance when applying it to my real life. If you haven't heard of it before, the Clutterbug system is a brilliant organization system created by Cassandra Arson. I will link her YouTube video again in the comments because I truly think that it is an amazing system. But the thing is, it talks about your preference when organizing. And while our preference for organizing can be one way, our capacity to organize that way can be completely different. And so that's why I want to talk a little bit more about adaptive organization. What happens when we're tired, or we're sick, or we had a bad day, or we had, a chronic pain flare up, depending, on everyone's circumstances. When your energy, your resources, your time, your capacity is not the same, your system should meet you where you are, which is where adaptive organization comes in. Now, you might have heard this piece of advice that says, design your systems for your worst day. And that is great advice, honestly. It is very compassionate. It tells you that it is okay to have a bad day and that it is okay to be compassionate and kind to yourself, which is what this channel is completely about. But my only thing with that piece of advice is that it's also a little bit limiting, because if you only design systems for your worst day, then those systems are not there for you on your best day, or your kind of good day, or your kind of bad day, or the days in between. It's a system that's created only for your worst day and not for all of the other days that you can have in your life. The thing about designing your system for your worst day is that that's great for when you're exhausted or burnt out or overwhelmed or having a chronic pain day, but it's a system that's only created for one version of you. Real life is not just our worst days. Real life is also our best days, and it's also every single day that's in between that. It's an entire spectrum. Some days are good, some days are bad, some days are great, some days are horrendous. We need to respect that spectrum and realize that we can create systems that flow through the spectrum just how we flow through our capacity. Your life doesn't just exist at one point of that spectrum, and your systems shouldn't either. Before we dive into the whole adaptive organization system, I want to make two caveats. First of all, privileges and resources. Please recognize that privileges and resources play a huge part here. You might find the ideal adaptive organization system for you and know that you can't have it because the space in your home is limited, or your money is limited, or your time, your energy, your capacity is limited. that is okay. You know, this is not about creating the Pinterest perfect home from the get-go. This is about taking tiny steps so that each time it's a little closer to what you would love to have it be. It's about learning about ourselves and doing what we can with what we have. Whether that is money, whether that is energy, whether that is capacity, it doesn't matter. What we can with what we have. So while yes, I'm going to talk and probably give examples of something that might be outside of your current resource or capacity, that doesn't mean that that's the one thing you need to do. You just need to find the next step that works for you based on your resources, your energy, your capacity, your money right now. The second thing I want you to know is that if clutter is your problem, as in you have too much stuff, this is not the video for you, because you can't organize yourself out of too much clutter. I don't remember who I heard that from. I think it was April from the Space Maker Method. It might have been Cass, like I'm not really sure, but I do believe that you cannot organize yourself out of too much clutter. If clutter is your problem, then I invite you to check out my decluttering videos, which are something completely different from organization, because you're just going to create a harder time for yourself and you're just going to be shaming yourself for not being able to keep up with a system when your problem is not that system. So now that we've done the caveats, we've done the recap, we've done all the things, let's get into the actual system. The system has 5 principles. Each principle is different. It will be different according to who you are and your own circumstances. It will apply differently to your life than it will to mine. I'm going to be giving a lot of examples of things that I do personally, but that might not be the best option for you. If you have any questions, or if you have doubts, or if you have a struggle that you can't come up with the answer, please leave it in the comments. I'm happy to try and help, brainstorm. If I have any ideas for you, I will happily share them in the comments. But 5 principles. Principle number 1 is designing for our capacity. A lot of organizing advice assumes that our capacity is going to stay the same, and once the system is created, the system just works. We just maintain it. However, capacity can fluctuate for many reasons. Fatigue, burnout, chronic pain, a health crisis. We need to be able to have a system that can adapt to that capacity. And so the question we want to ask is, how can my organizing system adapt to different capacity levels of mine? And this is where bridges come in. A bridge is something that, unites point A and point B. And so what we want for our bridges is basically to create something or add something to the system that allows the system to move from a worst day system to a best day system, and kind of stop in between as well, right? So an example of bridges are clutter boxes. I have baskets or boxes in different areas of my house that tend to get cluttered, so that on low energy days, my daily pickup reset, that doesn't happen every day, but that's what I call it, is on a low energy day is just to put everything in that box. It immediately creates, some visual calm, but I didn't actually do a full pickup, put everything back in its place kind of thing. So that clutter box is a type of bridge, right? On an ideal day, I'm putting everything back exactly where it goes perfectly. But on a low energy day for me, I'm throwing everything in the clutter box. And that's it. And sometimes that will happen for weeks until that clutter box is full. And I find a second clutter box and I start filling that one, because this isn't about, and once that clutter box is full, then I have to force myself to empty it. No, sometimes capacity can be low for weeks, months, years. That is okay, as long as that bridge is serving the purpose of making it easier to live in that moment for us. Another example, and I mentioned this in my previous video, is the hair drawer, right? I have a hair drawer, and inside are tiny organizers that have the different types of clips, like bobby pins and hair clips and different ponytails and stuff. When I am low capacity, everything just goes in the drawer. The drawer itself has become the bridge between my low energy system and my high energy best day system of having everything microly organized, which is how I like it. I prefer it. This works because, again, it takes away the visual clutter. It's easy to do on a low energy, low capacity day, but I can still find things when I need them because they're all in the same place. And when I am on a best day, I can quickly sort because everything is right there where I need it. Now, I will say that I got this comment on my previous video, and this person was suggesting having like a transitional type box inside that drawer where everything that, when I was low energy, everything that was like a mess went into that box inside the drawer instead of just going in the drawer itself, because then I wouldn't be disorganizing what I already had organized and I just had to go through what was in that box and put those things back. This is so smart, right? And don't you find it amazing when someone points something out that should be obvious to you, but for some reason, for whatever reason, it wasn't? This is basically a smaller version of a clutter box for me, right? My clutter box are like in my rooms, but this is a clutter box. It is put it all in the tiny clutter box in the drawer and then sort it when I can. That system will probably work great for me. And I really thank this commenter for, saying it and throwing it out there, because I am going to add that as a bridge to my own system so that my system can fluctuate with my capacity. Now, this person also mentioned having like stackable organizers so that I could just throw everything on top and then take that out and micro organize. I personally know that would not work for me because I would be very annoyed at the fact that I have to take this off to get to my organized things, but it might work for someone else, which is why I'm still sharing it here. Because again, adaptive organization systems have to adapt to us, and all of us are different. That was a long-winded way of saying that, just don't let your capacity stop you from creating a system. Principle number 2, follow your desire paths. Now, what in the actual is a desire path? So the term desire paths actually comes from like architectural and landscape design, and it's basically this. And what that is when architects or landscape designers design a path inside a park or something like that, and then people find a shorter, more direct route, and so many people are using it that usually in the grass there's a line of where people are walking the most, right? It's kind of like worn down the grass. And so that is a desire path. What is a desire path? It basically says this is how humans act in this environment. Human brains like the easiest way and the most direct way to get to things. We're pretty efficient in that. And so if I have to walk around this way to get from here to here when I can do this, I'm gonna do this. Most humans will not follow that, long curve and rule, and that's where desire paths come from in the literal, most true sense of the word. But desire paths are present in all of our lives all the time, and they don't even have to be a path per se. One example comes from Walt Disney. When he was doing Disneyland, he started observing people, how long people would walk before dropping their trash on the ground. And it was about 30 steps, if I'm not mistaken, before people would give up on the fact that a trash can was gonna be somewhere near them, and so they would just leave their trash on the ground. What did he do? He installed trash cans every 30 steps. And so that vastly reduced the trash problem that Disneyland was having from however many people they had, because he was adapting the system, in this case, the trash cans, to the human behavior and not the other way around. You notice how the solution wasn't to put a bunch of signs reminding people to throw the trash in the trash can. You notice how it wasn't shaming people or, punishing them for throwing their trash on the ground. It was literally changing the environment so that people would do what they wanted. The same thing happens in your home. We all have our own version of these desire paths. It's when you throw your keys on the floor, not on the floor, on the table right by your door because you don't have a place to hang them. It is when, your jacket ends up on the floor, or in my case, on the dining room table, on the back of the dining room table, because again, I don't have a place to hang it. And so I walk into my house and right in front of me is, I'm gonna say this is an example from my old house versus the new house, but still, right in front of me was the kitchen counter. And so I used to take my jacket off and right next to the kitchen counter was the dining room table, and I would hang it on top of the chair. And once one jacket was on the chair, jackets were on all the chairs, or multiple jackets were on one chair, and they just kind of multiplied. It was crazy. Basically, the second principle is about designing our systems based on our natural behavior instead of trying to change our behavior to match the system. The important thing here is that a lot of us have internalized how we are supposed to be, how we should be doing things, what an ideal home looks like, feels like, works like. And the important thing here is to know that you can throw all those shoulds and rules out the window because they don't matter in the context of your actual life. If key hooks work for you, great. If a key drawer works for you, great. If throwing your keys up in the air and having them stick onto the ceiling works for you, great. Seriously, what is your natural behavior and what would make it easy for you? That is what we're focusing on. What I want you to notice with this principle is notice where your clutter naturally piles up. And instead of asking, why can't I maintain the system, ask, what can I do to adapt the system to maintain this habit? If your keys are always landing on your kitchen counter, I did this in my last apartment, we just added a tray to the kitchen counter. And so at least they were landing on the tray in the kitchen counter. We always had like junk mail and a bunch of random things that were on the kitchen counter, and there was a drawer, the first drawer of that kitchen there, and I designated that drawer as the junk drawer. And so instead of putting everything on the kitchen counter, everything went in the drawer. Was that drawer always a mess? I mean, yes, but it kept the clutter off of the kitchen counter, which is what I needed for visual calm and less stress for me, less overwhelm and overstimulation. This is the desire path. I'm not gonna change the fact that when I get home, because I'm so from being in the street with the noises and the lights and the people and I just wanna take everything off and throw it on the ground. And I throw it on the first available surface. That's not gonna change. What can change is how I adapt that habit to make it something that makes my life easier. So I could have added a hook right next to the door to hang my jacket on, and that would have been better than hanging it on the back of a chair. Same thing goes for my purse. I did add the tray for my keys and my husband's wallet and stuff. We did do the junk drawer thing, and so we did some of the desire paths. We didn't do some other ones because there's always going to be room for improvement. But yes, it is about looking at your clutter as evidence. And that is something that I wanted to say because I actually have an entire video on looking at your clutter as evidence. I'll link it in the description below. If you're not really sure how to go about this principle, I really suggest watching that video because I go deeper into what your clutter says about you or could be saying about you and how to understand it with a little bit more compassion instead of shaming yourself for not being able to maintain the system. The last thing I want to talk about before we move on to principle 3, and I know that this principle has been kind of long, is clutter creep. One of the issues that, and I don't know who coined the term clutter creep, which by the way is a genius term for it, and it relates to our willpower as humans, but it is that when we leave something out, for example, we throw our keys and our mail on the dining room table, other clutter starts to creep in. And so first of all, you had one thing on there and then suddenly there's 25 things and you have no idea how your dining room table got that messy. This is normal. And what happens is our brain says, oh, look, things. I can leave other things here. That is it. That is the entire process your brain is doing. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because our desire paths and our natural behavior can not only be a way to create systems that adapt to that, but our natural behavior can also shape our future behavior. So by adding, in my case, that tray where our keys were supposed to land, because they were contained in that tray, we weren't adding a lot more clutter to the kitchen counter. Had I thought of hanging a hook at that moment for our, like my jacket and my purse when I landed in the door, I'm sure that our other jackets would not have ended up on the dining room table, on the dining room chairs either, because we wouldn't have seen them on the dining room chairs. And so sometimes we also need to see what our desire paths are causing that we don't like and that isn't natural behavior for us, so that we can adapt the system to be okay with the desired path, but stop the unwanted behavior. Okay, I think that's it for principle 2. Principle 3 is to balance visibility and your sensory needs. Your need to remember things and your need to be in a calm, peaceful environment. Many people have an out of sight, out of mind experience where if something is behind a closed door, it is like it does not exist. It is lost into the abyss of the universe and never to be found again. And that becomes a problem because that means that we need things out and visible so that we remember to do them. However, if everything is out and visible, here comes the other problem a lot of people have. Visual clutter is overstimulating. It's overwhelming, it's stressful, and when we're stressed and overwhelmed and overstimulated, our capacity, principle 1, is reduced. And so that's not helping us either. Here's the thing, these sound like two opposite sides of the spectrum. I need to see everything to remember it, and I need everything hidden away in order to not get stressed. But for a lot of people, both of these things are true at the same time. So we need to find systems that can adapt. I feel like I've said adapt 1,500 times in this video. That can adapt to our visibility needs, but also our nervous system needs. So strategy 1 is rotating visibility. Rotating visibility is all about having things visible when you need them and then having them not be visible when you don't. I gave an example of this in a previous video where I talked about, for example, if you're the kind of person who wants everything visible, you have, let's say, a pegboard here with tools or art supplies or something, and you want it all visible, but then you put a curtain in front of it for when you don't want it visible. So when you're using it, when you need it visible, when you have it, you have that curtain open, or even just in general, you have the curtain open when your capacity allows for that. But whenever you're feeling overstimulated or overwhelmed, or your capacity is lower and your visual clutter is stressing you out, then you close the curtain and the visual clutter is immediately gone. Another example of rotating visibility is having everything in a basket. I also gave this example of like having all of your hair stuff in a single basket that you can pull out, use everything because everything is visible in that basket, but you put the full basket back when you're done. So you're not having to go into a cabinet and search for things, pull out things from different drawers in different places. Everything is together and it's visible when you need it, but it's not visible all the time. Another example of this, I have like this big puzzle board. I love doing jigsaw puzzles, but it would stress me out that all the pieces were everywhere while I was getting it done. Now I have this big puzzle board thing. So when I want to work on my puzzle, I pull it out, I have all my pieces in front of me, I can put it together, but when I'm done, I just close it, put it back in its place, and I don't have to look at my puzzle until I'm ready to work on it again. Another way to think about rotating visibility is how our cabinets work, how they're built. So just like I could potentially throw like a curtain in front of here, I've seen things like, I believe they're called pocket cabinets. I'll put a picture here in kitchens where, imagine these are the two doors of the cabinet. So they open up like this, like a normal cabinet, but then they can push inside the cabinet. So instead of you having, if you had here, the door completely open, blocking your view, this door would push inside. And so it would be completely out of your walk path. And so you're essentially creating open shelving while you're using it. But if it gets overstimulating, you can close it and leave everything behind a closed door. I've seen all sorts of solutions for rotating visibility. I think it really depends on how okay you are with visible clutter, how okay you are with everything being outside. I'm not good with visual clutter. It really stresses me out. It puts me in a bad mood. It lowers my capacity and increases my stress and therefore decreases my health. I know there's some people who absolutely love having everything at hand all the time. And so again, it's about creating a system that adapts to what your preference is, but also allows you to change it depending on your mental state, your capacity, etc. Strategy 1. Strategy 2 is using visual cues. So I just mentioned that I do not like having things out all the time, but I am also very much an out of sight, out of mind person. I use visual cues to help remind myself of what I need to do, or if there's something I want to do, etc., etc. An example of this is my skincare. I have like a morning skincare routine and a night skincare routine, and there's all of these bottles and all of these things that I have to put on my face, and I don't want it all on my counter. My bathroom counter is tiny and I don't want it all out all the time because it drives me crazy that there's 8 different bottles of 8 different things and they're all different colors and different sizes and different shapes, and it drives me insane. I have a sticky note, nothing fancy. I have a sticky note with my morning skincare routine and my night skincare routine written out, and well, 2 sticky notes, one for the morning, one for the night routine, and they're stuck on my bathroom mirror. And so the sticky note serves as a visual cue to remind me of the thing that is out of sight and therefore out of mind. And I have that thing in a big box as a rotating visibility thing, so I can take it out, use it, put it all back, and I don't need to look at it. Strategy 3 is intentional visibility. Intentional visibility is about being really strategic with the things that you have visible, that you want to have visible, so that they are not adding to your overwhelm or your overstimulation with visual clutter. So this can be something like having a pretty bowl where you put your keys when you walk in the door. From afar, it just looks like a pretty bowl. It looks decorative, but when you are nearby it, you can see the keys and see your wallet and see your things and grab your things. So everything is visible from up close, but it is not visible from afar. Again, there are a million ways to apply this, but it's all about being intentional with what do I need to be visible, but how can I do it in a way that is also attractive, in a way that is also beautiful, in a way that also brings me joy. That's principle 3. Principle 4 is all about reducing friction. Now, this is something that a lot of creators on organization and neurodivergence talk about. And it is all about making things easier for ourselves. So we talked about desire paths and our natural behavior. Reducing friction is all about doing something about what we analyzed before. So if you are the kind of person who likes to kick off your shoes as soon as you get into the house, then maybe your shoe storage needs to be at the entrance of your house and not all the way in your master bedroom inside your closet. If you are a person who is always losing your keys, maybe your keys need a designated spot, and maybe that spot needs to be highly visible as soon as you walk in the door so that you put them there. Because if it's not highly visible as soon as you walk in the door, then it's not there, right? Every organizing system requires effort. There's some sort of effort tied to it. The more effort a system requires, the harder it becomes to maintain. And that is what friction is. It's the things and the little annoyances that make our systems harder to maintain, which means that on best days, they're still a little bit annoying, and on worst days, there's no way it's gonna happen. And so we need to find a way that works for both. So one example of this with me, I've talked about this, I really like closed storage. I like things hidden away. So one thing I use a lot are opaque containers, but when I am low energy, that does not work. I like containers that are opaque and I like them with lids. But again, when I'm low energy, that doesn't work for me. And so what I do is I always pick containers that have removable lids, because if the lid is removable, it means that when I am in a low energy or low capacity season in my life, I can take off the lid and put it under the container or behind the container if it's on a shelf or something, and make it an open container, adapting, reducing the friction when I am in lower capacity. But I can easily go back to my preferred system when I am on my best day, right? That is one way of reducing friction depending on your capacity. Another example that I recently thought of, I haven't applied this in my life yet, but is I wonder if there's containers. I don't even know if this exists. I might need to make these. But I wondered if there's containers that are clear on one side and opaque on the other. So, high energy, I can flip them around on the opaque side with a lid and be completely content with the fact that everything is hidden away. But when I'm low energy and I need to see things, I can flip them back and use them on the clear side, and I can see everything at one glance, and it is better. for me. Again, I don't even know if these exist. This is just an example that came into my head while writing out everything that I wanted to say in this video. But basically, the whole point is, how can I reduce the friction of keeping up the system? What is causing the friction? What is annoying me? What is that tiny thing that I have to do before finishing the thing of the system that makes me go, why? That is friction, and that can be reduced, replaced, removed. You know, you can do something with that. Reducing friction also helps with something that we mentioned in principle 2, which is clutter creep. When you reduce friction, it's easier for you to maintain the systems. When you maintain the systems, then clutter creep is avoided, because if you actually get used to leaving your keys in the exact same place every time, instead of just throwing them anywhere, then that is one less piece of clutter that is on a flat surface that will inevitably gather more clutter. And that is also where friction and willpower come into play. Willpower gets weaker during the day. So if you have, there's like a study on this, but like, let's say I had a bowl of chocolates. You know what? No, I'm gonna be honest. I have a bottle of Coca-Cola on my dining room table. And every time I walk past to my kitchen or back to my room, back to my kitchen, I see the Coke bottle and I'm like, I'm not gonna drink it today. For those of you who don't know me that well, or you're new here, Coca-Cola is my addiction. Yeah, I love it. I can resist it all day, but the more I resist it, the less willpower I have. And the less willpower I have is not just the less willpower I have regarding the Coke bottle, it's the less willpower I have in general. And that is something that happens with friction. Like, it happens with willpower and friction, or it has to do with friction. And what I mean is, when we have to do 3 steps to put our shoes away, then a lot of times we don't put our shoes away. And so we leave a pair of shoes there, and the next day we leave another pair of shoes there. And the third day we leave another pair of shoes there. And then we're thinking, oh, I should really put those shoes away. But now it's not 1, it's not 2, it's 3 pairs of shoes. And your willpower to do that is not there. But then it's not also the shoes, because then that causes the clutter creep, which means that there's more clutter in other places, and you still have to do dishes and laundry, which are always adding up and piling up somehow, and are never done. And then there's like cleaning and then it all becomes this big thing where all the time you're trying to use sheer willpower to maintain systems, and your willpower is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. You're getting more and more tired, and you don't know why you can't keep up with the system. That is why. Reduce the friction. Principle number 5 is all about designing for your time cycles and life transitions. So what does that mean? It means that we don't always have the same amount of time, and we don't always have the same capacity, aka time. We're also sometimes in different transitions of our lives. Let's talk about time cycles first. You know that thing when people are like, yeah, all you need to do is gather your mail every week in the same place, and then once a week you sort it and you get rid of the junk mail and you file perfectly away in your mail system the thing, and you're like, this is never gonna happen. Like, I'm not doing that once a week. So that is built for people who have apparently the same capacity every single day, the same time, the same energy, the same thing. These perfect humans that are almost robot-like that I have yet to meet. I've never met one of these humans. But apparently they exist because a lot of systems sound like this, right? But no, what we want to do is create an adaptable system that allows us to work within the time cycles that our capacity allows. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, with the mail example, let's have a designated spot to put the mail so that when we have the capacity to sort through it, we have it all together in one place. And we're not using that capacity to find all the mail and put it in one place and then go through it, because then we already used part of our energy just in gathering and finding the mail. Life principle number 5 is about creating containers, I guess you could say, or creating small systems that help you have an easier time going through things and organizing things and keeping things up when those time cycles align in a way that serves your capacity. The other thing is about life transitions, right? A lot of times we are in the middle of a transition. We could be moving, we could be changing a job, we could have just had a kid or adopted a dog. And when life transitions happen, we must create systems that are adaptable enough to exist in that moment and disappear when that transition is over. So I recently moved, like I mentioned before in this video, and when I was moving, I created a basket that had all my packing supplies in it. It had scissors, it had tape, it had box cutter, it had labels, it had markers, and multiple of each thing, mind you, because if I left something out of the basket, I was never gonna find it again. What that meant is that whenever I wanted to pack a box, I knew where everything that I needed to pack that box was. I didn't need to go out and find my scissors, and then go to the other place and find my packing tape, and then go and find my markers. Everything was in one place. That is a system that adapted to my life transition. And as soon as I finished moving, everything went back to its actual place. That basket disappeared. That system was gone. That adapted to my life instead of me adapting to the system I had already created. And that is something that I also want you to take into account. If you're going through a life transition, what are the systems that need to change or tweak for some time to support you in that life transition? Oh, and one thing I didn't mention with time cycles also includes seasonal stuff. So by seasonal, I mean winter, spring, summer, holidays, right? You wouldn't keep your Christmas stuff right here when this is a really accessible spot to keep things that you use daily all the time. You wouldn't keep your winter clothes at the forefront of your closet when it's summer. How can these systems adapt to also support us in different seasons of our life, whether that's a holiday, an actual like winter, summer type season, or a life transition? At the end of the day, adaptive organization is not about creating the best organizing system, but creating a system that adapts to you on your worst days, on your best days, and on your everything in between days. Adaptive organization is about asking the system to meet you where you are instead of asking you to meet the system where it is. It asks the question of what happens when my capacity changes, my life transition changes, what is this friction, what are my desire paths, and allows you to support who you are as a whole human, no matter what is going on, and live your best life despite all of it, or because of all of it. I don't know how to say it. I guess what I want to say is your life changes. You're a human, you're not a robot, and as your life changes, so should your systems. Now, before I go, I'd love to know, where is one place in your house where you feel the most friction? And like, what's the place where things keep piling up? And have you thought of solutions for it? What are solutions that you've tried that maybe haven't worked? And I don't know, maybe I can give you some ideas. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps this channel grow. I make new videos like this every single Friday, so until then, stay wild, stay weird, and I'll see you in the next one.